Ah, wine. It's always 5 o'clock somewhere in the Niagara region. On the other side of Lake Ontario, across from Toronto, resides the Niagara region. And in Niagara is the historical, quaint little town called Niagara-on-the-Lake. A town on almost everybody's map. That is, when it comes to wine. A place very famous for the history and war of 1812, it is now famous for its wineries and multitude of wines. Whether they be whites, reds, rosés, or sparkling, there is always something for everybody's taste buds or palate. In fact, it would make Alfred Hitchcock proud, or at least the birds from his famous movie. When you're in Niagara-on-the-Lake, you are a part of wine history. There is always a chance to toast a glass of wine. The great Orson Welles once said in a 1970s commercial for wines, "We will sell no wine before it is time." Well, welcome to wine country, where wine is served all of the time. I love Niagara.
I have a question for you. What do you know about Niagara?
It has a really big falls.
I have a question for you. Do you like history?
So let me ask you, is that a rhetorical question?
Niagara, it's more than just the falls. It's rich in history and wine.
Okay, so we were talking about the more obscure places in Niagara. Some of the coolest history is not even in Niagara Falls.
Historical Niagara rocks!
What else do you have to say for yourself?
Good morning, I'm Donald, and I'm all about history.
And I'm all about the base. The base. If you're born, raised, or visit Niagara, you're always from Niagara. One of the greatest places on earth. The history of winemaking has truly evolved. From up close and personal chomping and stomping, to the prolonged process of churning and turning. It is all about harvesting, crushing, and pressing, the process of vinification, and of course, fermentation, clarification, and aging, and eventually bottling. Cheers! Oh yes, on a side note, is this where the concept of toe jam originated? Okay folks, there's your pop lesson on how wine is made in Niagara. Well, sort of. But this is not a documentary about making wine, rather about the history of wine in Niagara. So, let's see what our experts have to say.
First winery was Vin Villa. If we go way back to the middle 1800s, that was in Pelee Island. Here, the first official winery is Inniskillen. They were the first winery to be granted a license post-prohibition in 1974, first vintage 75. So that was Don Zeraldo and Carl Kaiser. They were really the pioneers of the modern day Niagara wine industry.
Niagara-on-the-Lake is blessed with a community that came into, the Mennonite community that came into this area and saw the advantages and the adaptability of planting tender fruit and now grapes. We have, it has been added to by other members of the community who also believe in what we have here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which has helped our community grow into probably the highest, most productive winery areas in the country, not just in the Niagara region. So we're very proud of our agricultural heritage here in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Well, we're one of the founding partners of the Grape and Wine Festival, so it goes back 60 years plus. And as a city, I think early on we knew that it was important to support our agricultural partners around us. So partnering with the Grape Growers of Ontario, the creation of what would be the Grape and Wine Festival, St. Catharines was one of the founding partners, and I think it was one of the best moves that the founders made.
It's a really interesting mix of art and science, and an interesting set of skills that you need in order to approach the challenges that are there in winemaking. There's so much science to know. There's having to trust your gut in certain situations as well. You have to be very aware of the weather, and Mother Nature plays a huge part of delivering the tools that you are going to have when you make your wine.
When Robert Addison came to Niagara in 1790, he brought with him this silver chalice. It was made by Frederick Romer in London in 1768, and Addison used it in the administration of the Holy Communion for the 37 years he was in Niagara. We know that General Sir Isaac Brock drank from this cup. We know that Brant drank from it, we know that Molly Brant drank from it, we know the Queen of England drank from it, and we know that I drank from it. It is the single most important memory of Addison that we possess.
Obviously the industry is relatively new. The modern industry is late 80s, early 90s, so we're still figuring a lot of these things out. But generally speaking, I think stylistically, in say 4 Mile Creek or some of the flatter areas of Niagara-on-the-Lake, we have a different soil type. We've got sort of a less slope, obviously, less slope, less aspect, no altitude change, no elevation changes whatsoever for the most part, except for St. David's Bench. Whereas on the escarpment side, we've got very rocky soils, dolomitic, limestone, sandstone, shale, and as we come off the escarpment, then we start to see another range of soils in creek shores, et cetera, all the way up to the lake shore. So the soils make a big difference, the airflow makes a big difference, and how the air off the lake rebounds and reflects off those vineyards. So generally speaking, I would say very suitable for Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir on the bench side, more delicate wines where we want that minerality, we want that bright acidity, we want that sort of elegance and delicacy. And then some of the Bordeaux varieties like Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot to some degree, a little bit more suitable in the kind of warmer, static heat in the summer times in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Niagara wine is hitting the world stage in a big way. The interesting things that are being picked up around the world include obviously the Icewine, which we've made world famous, but as well, the interesting things that have been happening in Niagara with Appassimento wines is getting noticed around the world as well. Us being leaders in experimenting with using different varietals, including white varietals, has really gotten a lot of attention around the world. And of course, the cool climate that we have here makes very interesting Chardonnays. Many people know about the I4C event that happens every year in Niagara, where cool climate vintners from around the world come here to see what we're doing.
The winery industry means so much to so many areas of our economic development, our tourism, our agri-tourism, our culinary, our just the wine itself is such a large portion of our economy here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We need to respect that, we need to encourage that, and we need to show you that we are behind you and that we intend to do that.
When you look at the Grape and Wine Festival in its origins to where we are today, it's just to see that evolution, and I think it's evolved with the industry itself. And when you look at the wine industry, when you look at the global connections now between the wine communities, between consumers who are looking for different experiences, the Grape and Wine Festival has really evolved into a truly wine experience that it's attracting people from around the world.
In the old days, wines grown here in Niagara were not the best quality. everything basically started out in the 70s with the first cottage winery. And from there on, we have now over 300 wineries in Niagara Region, which produce the world-class wines, including obviously Icewine, red wines, white wines, which are distributed all over the world meanwhile. I came here the first time back in 1978. I was a youngster, I was just 15 years old. I know below the legal age of drinking. However, my parents had a winery, so I always were tasting wines with my dad, and a friend of ours was a winemaker at a larger winery. So we came over here to visit him, we tasted some wines, and the wines were really not to my taste, even as a young person, and kind of, what, I can do better. And so as a youngster, a dream was born that, I want to come to Canada and make wine, and I just saw a chance, for myself to make a difference. The first Icewine was made in 1794, back in Franconia in Germany. It was actually made by monks. And so what we try to do here, or what we do at the monastery Sidders, we close the loop again. So first Icewine was made in Germany by monks, and here now again we are in Canada, which is meanwhile the biggest producer of Icewine and also the best producer of Icewine, not because we are the best winemakers, because we just have the perfect climatic conditions. So really we close the circle from Icewine made by monks, back again to monks making Icewine, and this time making the best Icewines in the world.
So Grapescape's been operating for about 13 years in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Lots of different exciting kind of experiences that we do at all the different wineries. Our vehicle tours, we have a bit of a wider scope that we can visit wineries all across the region, including the Bench and the Vineland area too. So being a cooler climate growing region, Niagara-on-the-Lake is especially important to how we can showcase what we can do here in Canada to people visiting from across the world. Our speciality being Icewine, which is extremely famous and very popular with our guests. People love to come and try it, being pretty much the only region in the world that can produce it so well and so consistently year after year.
So this winery at Niagara College actually started its operation in the year 2000 with our program, Winery and Viticulture Technician. Earlier, we didn't have this building. We used to make wine in a barn across the street. This building came about in year 2009 when Prince Charles was here to inaugurate the building. And since then, we have been here in the Wine Visitor and Education Center. We operate as a commercial and a teaching winery, and all our products are made right here on site. We sell only in this store. So it's been 10 years since we have been in this building now. Niagara College has been a pioneer as far as many programs related to alcohol industry go. We were the first ones to bring a Niagara College teaching winery. So a teaching winery, a teaching brewery, a teaching cidery, a teaching distillery, and now we also have a cannabis program on campus. It's the only place in the whole world where you can actually find all these things on one college campus. And I would say we have created professionals in the industry for the past 20 years. It's difficult to find a winery all across North America where you wouldn't find a graduate that has taken a wine program from Niagara College. On the world stage, I would say there are a few places that have been teaching winemaking and wine and viticulture to students on the job, off the job, and in college campuses as well. I would say Niagara College Teaching Winery itself, as a winery, commercial winery and products, have been winning awards across the world stage. We mostly participate in North American wine championships, and we have been winning awards consistently for many of our products. Our white wines, ice wines, sparkling wines, red wines, the different portfolio that we have across is very consistent to the market portfolio as such. And we try to stay in trend and also trailblaze sometimes. Like last year, we did our Underground series, which is a 6,000-year-old tradition we are trying to keep alive through our winemaking skills.
You know, the investment in money, the international travel, the research, the incredible work that Brock is doing, and Covey, the great work that Niagara College is doing. You know, we've just built an amazing infrastructure and network of sort of expertise and tools, and people are starting to sit up and take notice. They realize that we are winning international awards, that you know, the wines that we produce are at quality levels that actually make them quite affordable. If you look at a $35 price tag, you probably think that's expensive. But if you're comparing it to comparable wines in Burgundy or in Bordeaux, then a $35 wine will get you something very average in those places, and it gets you one of the, you know, top tier wines in Niagara. So it's all perspective. People are starting to figure that stuff out, and that's making a big difference to their shopping patterns.
Yeah, we're a grape collar town. So when you go from a blue collar to a grape collar, and it really is, when we've shifted as a community, much like the identity of St. Catharines is no longer just tied to manufacturing. It's tied to agriculture. It's tied to the wine and the grape industry. It's tied to Brock University, which has a very strong wine program at the Covey, the Cool Climate Enology and Viticulture Institute. So our DNA has changed, and it's very much now rooted. We have a strong roots when it comes to the grape and wine industry that surrounds us.
The military history began in Niagara 100 years ago in the 1920s. They stayed here for, a couple brothers stayed here for a couple of years to work, then returned home to Sicily. In 1948, they came again to Niagara, farmed on Lake Shore Road, and by 1965, Gary Pelletieri built a house on this farm.
Pelletieri Estates began as a very humble family operation, and still actually is a family operation. My mom and dad bought the farm in 1965, and we moved in on December 15th, 1965. I remember pulling into the driveway and my dad actually announcing to our family that this is where we were going to live and this is where we were going to make our lives. And it hasn't changed since then. Not the fact that we still live here and make our lives here, but that we now are a winery. We started as a tender fruit farming operation, and we had peaches, and we had cherries, and we had pears, and we had plums, and we had apricots. And then as the years went on, in order to preserve our farmlands, we knew that to stay viable and to stay on the farmland, that we had to plant grapes. And that was really my dad's passion from the very beginning anyway. In 1993, we decided to open the winery, and we've had such success since then, and continued success. I still can say that it's a family operation with 4 generations actively still involved in this family-owned winery, with my mom and my dad at the helm and still working here hard every day, and my sister and our brother and myself, and now there are 3 of the grandchildren in the family business as well, full-time.
So the Olympic partnership that we've made with Team Canada is to be the official wine sponsor. What that means is that we have athletes regularly coming here to the winery. We get to do a lot of fun special events that we've never done before on a huge scale with these big Olympic partners. And it means that we're actually going to the Olympic Games, and we're at Canada House, we're pouring our wines, we're actually together with the athletes. And it's amazing to have a partnership where we're actually with Canadians that just love our wines and want to compete at the highest level, and we get to be right beside them. So our winery has really been leading the way with the most special wine made in Canada, which is Icewine. We're selling it now in over 35 countries around the world, which means myself, my uncle, my family members, we're promoting this, and it's interesting because you go all over the world and people know where Niagara Lake is. I'd say Icewine has really put us on the map.
Hi, I'm Pete from the Pete and Reed Show, and Yeah, I've had my share of wine, and I like wine. Of course, living in Niagara, you've got all kinds of wines to choose from here, and from different areas, up in the upper bench and the lower bench, so we have all kinds of different wines. And this is actually my favorite wine, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'm not going to favor anybody. But I do have the trivia question for you today, and the trivia question is, how many wines are there? And the answer is there's 4 types of wine: red, white, sparkling, and rosé. Cheers.
Okay, so this is the Niagara Ice Wine Festival.
The Icewine Festival started 25 years ago. Niagara-on-the-Lake was the first and the original Icewine Festival, and we're still one of the largest. We have our Icewine Village outside during 2 weekends, and we have 2 galas and 1 cocktail competition in the Icewine Village. The Icewine Festival is one of our best known events during the year.
So we started this journey back in 1980, when Nick and his brother Mike and their parents, Joseph and Maria, purchased the land, and they purchased it with grapes already on the vine. They used to sell those grapes to make Welch's grape juice, a lot of it, also to some wineries in the area. But in '89 they pulled all those grapes out, and we did nothing with the land for about 15 years until finally the extended family, myself, my cousins, my brother included, we decided to plant the grapes on the property in 2004. Started the groundbreaking for the building to finish off the process this time in 2008, and then Labor Day weekend of 2010 was when we formally opened our doors as a winery. Niagara, it's actually taken off quite substantially in terms of wine quality, and it really has improved over the years as to the high quality of wines that you're now seeing come out of this area. Not just ice wines, but high quality whites, high quality reds, and finally more and more people are getting behind the local wines and finally starting to see that, you know what, Niagara is a great area for wines, and we can enjoy them just as much as anywhere around the world. We always thought when we were a family, we always got together, we drank wine, we always told stories. So having wineries in this area really helps bring people to this area, brings people together to celebrate something that everyone can enjoy and tell a story about and enjoy together. So having more and more wineries in this area really does help the industry as a whole, really brings people to come to enjoy something that can relax you and enjoy it in their own time and really bring people together. We see that so substantially around the summer, around the Christmas time, where family comes in from all over and they say, you know what, let's go visit a winery, let's go enjoy a glass of wine together and really enjoy each other's company with sharing wine.
The Icewine Festival was a right place for romance, for a romantic break during the weekend. And we remember 2 or 3 years ago, we remember one fantastic anecdote, and one guy that wanted to propose to his girlfriend during the Sparkle on Ice Gala. So he contacted our event coordinator, Nicole. He contacted Nicole, and we hired a photographer for him that followed them all during the gala. We make everything ready, and when the time came for the fireworks, he proposed, and it was a success. The next year they came back married, and we have tons of these kind of anecdotes that are very quite all about what the Icewine Festival is all about. It's about having fun and tasting some of the best ice wine in the world.
What is an authentic building that represents Niagara? And the thought was, well, an old fruit barn, if we can find one. It just so happened there was a barn that was located in near Smithville that was about to be taken down and perhaps destroyed. when we found out about it. So we approached the owner and said, look, now it certainly didn't look like this, but it was a very, very old, large timber frame barn. And it was, Hugh Fraser is a barn historian, has dated the barn as being pre-1840. And he actually looked up all the owners and the people that actually built it. It was built by Mennonites. So we thought the barn frame itself was in very, very good shape, and we thought we could see our way through to taking what was there, and what you see today is that result. We took it down, numbered all the parts, re-architected it in CAD/CAM or in CAD, and then worked it all the way through. Would it work as a barn? And this is what you see today. And then Mennonites built it originally, Mennonites took it down, and Mennonites reconstructed it here.
The Grimsby is considers itself as the gateway to Niagara, and we do have a couple wineries still. We're not wine focused. We certainly have the 40 distillery as well, which has a long history with John and Eileen Hall, who it was originally called Kittling Ridge, and it was changed to the 40 to honor 40 Creek whiskey, which John Hall was the spirit master, and he promoted it all over North America to make it the popular spirit it is today.
Calamus Estate Winery was first brought on 11 years ago, and the former owners, Pat and Derek, had a vision of turning in a 200-year-old dairy farm into a vineyard and a barn. Our family, the Van Helsingen family, purchased it in September 2018. The history of the property itself was interesting, is when they planted the vineyards with 18 Mile Creek running through it, they were able to find many of arrowheads. And the arrowheads today are now posted inside the barn for the public to view. And a lot of the history dates back to over 200 years ago, including the main barn, which now houses the retail store. Bringing on the history of the winery, when we purchased the winery, there was 2 barns that were in the back, dilapidated. So going through them, cleaning them, we were very lucky to find this wheel. And this wheel was a true reason of, after doing the research, was how they got the hay in the original dairy farm from, of course, the lower to the upper, where they kept the hay. After pressure washing it many times, we have then found out that the date on it was 1890. So it brought the entire history of the winery back to it, into the original state of where it was from the dairy farm that it once was to what it is today in its glory. This wine that you see in front of you has been already, for 2016, our Cab Sauv has been in French oak for 3 years, and now we bring it into our Kentucky whiskey barrels. These barrels were brought up specifically from Kentucky, where the wine is now put in for 3 months. When we first purchased the winery, Kevin, our winemaker, said, "Peter, I have no idea how long to keep the wine in the barrel for. Let's try it." He says, "Peter, I could tell you that there's 250 bottles of wine in each barrel, and you might waste, with the retail value, $9,000. I said, "Let's do 2 barrels then." With the success of it the first year, with the wine club, all the wine was sold before it was even bottled. So our winemaker, Kevin, said, "Peter, let's do 30, 40 barrels, and I still like to keep it a small batch, so there's only 2 barrels that are completed every time." So every 3 to 4 months, we bottle literally between 525 and 550 right here in the cellar floor by hand. And this wine is named after my father, the Double Barrel Williams Cab Sauvignon.
The wineries that are here, the Henry Appellums, the Hernders, the 13th Street, they're really, really embracing that connectivity to the urban market and really keeping the rural nature of how they started. And what we're seeing is the explosion of the culinary scene in downtown St. Catharines. And that's an extension of the grape and wine industry, because while we can't really create more wineries within St. Catharines because of the urban boundaries, we are fixed and we're surrounded by the Greenbelt. What it allows us to do is, in downtown, through the culinary arts, really make that connection for our consumers. And so when they go to a restaurant downtown, the expectation there is there's going to be great wines from Niagara on the wine list. And it really is creating that relationship that while has been there for a while, has really now exploded in our downtown.
Wineries are extremely important to tourism in Niagara-on-the-Lake. They're one of the three main reasons people visit Niagara-on-the-Lake. Wineries are bringing to Niagara-on-the-Lake, they're responsible for about 2.2 million visitors, tourists related to wine. The experience that the wineries are offering, not only the products, but the experiences that each winery is offering in their own premises is essential for our tourism industry.
What I would like to say to the wineries is keep going. There are issues and challenges that we have ahead of us to allow the wineries to prosper in the way that they should. The 35% tax that we're currently, through previous governments, all the way from 1927, having to pay to the LCBO. We're hopeful that the government of the day will stop the importation tax of domestic wines. If that should happen, it will make our wineries, not just in Niagara-on-the-Lake, but all across the province, much more productive, and they'll be able to focus more on the jobs and the work that they love, and that is the production of wine, and not have to look for ways to try to accommodate this unnecessary tax.
We are sort of plateauing in that all the available vineyard land is getting close to being eaten up. We have 130 odd wineries now here, where we only had 30 20 years ago. So as much as that is plateauing in a certain way, it's also giving us all the tools we need to refine what we do here, be a little bit more intelligent about the varieties we decide on for certain sites, and start focusing on what Niagara does best, instead of a lot of the experimentation that's happened up until now.
But I like the Cab Franc. There's a couple of wineries that I prefer, and with respect to white, I like the Pinot Grigio. White just needs to be chilled, and I'm drinking. So those are the two. Those are my favorites.
Well, I will choose red. Red is my favorite, but this weekend I will choose Icewine. Icewine is either red or white. Icewine is a fantastic product, and the product that put us on the world map of winemaking.
And there you have it, folks, from the honeymoon capital of the world, also known as wine country. If you are ever in the area, definitely stop in for a wine tasting or two. Until then, cheers. I have a question for you. Do you love history? If so, do you love Niagara Falls? It's time to check out one of the greatest museums in Canada.
I'm Clark Burnett from the City of Niagara Falls Museums. Right now I'm standing in the Gale Family War of 1812 gallery. Behind me is a wonderful backdrop of Niagara Falls, and that's what we do here. We talk about the wonderful history of Niagara Falls. So the War of 1812, we're standing on the battlefield, the Battle of Lundy's Lane here. The Lincoln Militia were positioned right here during the battle itself, and we're on historic property around the Main and Ferry area. When people come here, they come and visit this gallery, and they can also see the rest of the Niagara Falls story. We tell all the many different stories that are unique to the community and what we do here in the City of Niagara Falls. You'll learn about tourism, you'll learn about hydro generation, you'll learn about the firefighters and the military people that fought here. And then in our temporary gallery, we do lots of different things throughout the year. Next coming up is World War Women, we've done electricity, we got hockey in the summertime, and lots of other things to let you sort of understand the history of Niagara Falls, the history of the world, and the history of Canada. Come to the Niagara Falls History Museum and get your hands-on history.